Hi dear friends, now in this lecture we are going to discuss the differences between arteries and veins. I have already discussed the structure of blood vessels, so go and watch that video so that it will be easy to understand the structure of blood vessels. Now in this lecture we are going to discuss about the difference between arteries and veins. So let's begin. First of all, we know that arteries are those blood vessels which carry blood away from the heart. So we are just giving you some different points about arteries and veins. We should know some differences between them. Arteries are those blood vessels which carry the blood away from the heart, and veins are those blood vessels which bring the blood towards the heart. For example, like this, I will explain each point and I will draw a diagram here so that you can understand, right? For example, let us know about this point, that if this is our heart, right? This is our heart. So arteries are those blood vessels which take the blood away from the heart. Yes, this is our artery, right? So blood is flowing from the heart towards the body, from the heart towards the body in arteries, right? So we say that arteries are those blood vessels which carry the blood away from the heart, and veins are those blood vessels which bring the blood towards the heart, generally speaking, right? So they bring the blood towards the heart. This was the first point that we should know about them. Arteries carry the blood away from the heart, and veins carry the blood towards the heart or bring the blood towards the heart. Next important point about arteries and veins, that arteries contain oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery. Listen carefully. All arteries in our body, all arteries contain oxygenated blood. It means in the arteries we have oxygenated blood. But the exception is with the pulmonary artery, and this artery arises from heart, right? From right ventricle, and takes the blood towards the pleura, towards the lungs, right? These are our lungs. Okay, so this is artery, right? So this artery is taking deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle towards the lungs for oxygenation, right? So all arteries in our body contain oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery, and this artery contains deoxygenated blood which arises from right ventricle and takes the blood towards the lungs for oxygenation. And all veins contain deoxygenated blood except pulmonary veins, right? Look carefully. From here, when the blood comes back towards the left atrium, so this is a vein, and it contains oxygenated blood. This is a vein, but still it contains oxygenated blood, and this is the exception. All the veins contain deoxygenated blood, but the pulmonary veins contain oxygenated blood. Okay, this was the second difference. Next difference between arteries and veins is that all arteries are deeper in the body, right? Arteries are located deep in the body, and mostly veins are located superficially in the body. So this is another difference. But some arteries are also superficially, for example, radial artery, for example, carotid arteries, and for example, the arteries which are in the ankle region, right? So, all arteries are present deep in the body, and veins mostly are present superficially in the body, like we can see here the veins, right? Okay. The next difference is the fourth one, that arteries don't have valves and veins possess valves. What is valve? Look carefully. This is an artery, right? This is its tunica media. This is the tunica media. Okay. Then we also have tunica externa. And then we all know there is tunica interna. We have already discussed all of them. Okay, this is the case for artery. Now look at the case for vein. This is tunica externa. Then there is tunica media. This is tunica media. Now at certain points, this tunica media goes inward. This tunica media goes inward. From that side also. You can see here, they are making valves. They are making valves here. Right. And this is our tunica intima. Right. Look. What is the difference between an artery and a vein? These are, friends, valves. Right? And what is their function? Their function is that when blood is flowing from this way to that way, this blood applies pressure on these valves, right? And these valves will open like this, right? They will open and the blood is pushed forward. Now the blood comes here and this blood again applies pressure on these valves so that these valves could be closed. When these valves are closed, blood cannot come back, right? So these are the valves which prevent the backflow of the blood. As friends, we know that in arteries, the blood goes with more pressure. So blood cannot come back. But in veins, blood flow is very steady. Blood pressure is very low. So there can be a chance of backflow of the blood, right? So to prevent that, there are valves in the veins of our bodies. So this is vein and it contains valves. And what are the functions of these valves? These valves are there to prevent the backflow of the blood. Okay. The next function is that in arteries, the tunica externa is thinner. But in veins, the tunica externa is thicker. Like in this example, I will explain this point. In arteries, tunica externa is thinner. This is the tunica externa of this artery. But here the tunica externa you can see is thicker. Okay, this is our tunica externa. You can see the difference now clearly that veins have thick tunica externa. Veins have thick tunica externa, but arteries have thin tunica externa. Clear? You can distinguish in this diagram. Next important point about arteries is that in arteries tunica media is thicker, but in veins tunica media is thinner. Now let us complete our diagram here. This is the tunica media of the artery. Okay, now you can see this. the difference between an artery and a vein. Look here, this is the tunica media of this vein and this is the tunica media of this artery. Now an artery's tunica media is thicker, but in veins tunica media is thinner. Clear? Okay, this was the sixth difference between arteries and veins. What is the next difference is that in arteries the lumen of the blood vessel or artery is narrow. Look here, this is the lumen. Here I am writing lumen and look at this lumen. This is the lumen of the vein. Now you can see the difference. The lumen of the vein is larger than the lumen of the artery, right? So arteries have narrow lumen, veins have wider lumen. This is another difference. Next difference is that in arteries the blood flow is jerky and in veins the blood flow is uniform. How? As we know that the lumen of the arteries is narrow, lumen is narrow, and from backside the heart is applying more pressure on the blood vessels, as the pressure of our LV is 120 mm Hg, and the next pressure which the arteries is pushing the blood is about 80 mm Hg. Now this is a very large pressure on the arteries, right, on the blood. Now look, when our ventricle is applying pressure, heart is contracting. Heart is contracting and relaxing. Now when the heart contracts, it pushes the blood, right? So that's why with the contraction, with the fast contraction of the heart, the blood flow in the artery is jerky. And here the blood flow is uniform, as there is wider lumen and there is low pressure, so the blood is moving steadily and uniformly. Okay, next difference is between arteries and veins that arteries are elastic and veins are less elastic. How? As our arteries have thicker tunica media, there are more smooth muscles here, so when the smooth muscles contract, so they give the elastic nature to the arteries, and here we have less smooth muscles, so they will be less elastic. Okay, so arteries are more elastic and veins are less elastic. The next difference in between arteries and veins is that in arteries the pressure on the blood is more and in veins the pressure is low. How? As there is narrow lumen of the artery, the first thing. The next thing is the pressure in the artery is more. Here the lumen is larger, right? And the tunica media is applying less pressure, so the blood flow, the blood pressure in the veins is lower than the blood pressure in the arteries. Okay, the next important difference between arteries and veins is that whenever a person dies, the arteries of that person will be emptied. What is the meaning of this? That whenever a person dies, his blood will be poured in the veins. The blood will be poured in the veins, and that blood will remain in the veins, and the blood cannot come back to the heart, so that they could be pushed towards the arteries. So whenever a person dies, arteries pour their blood into the veins, so that the arteries become empty, and veins remain full after death. The difference is here, the 11th difference is that arteries after death become empty and veins after death remain full of the blood. Right. Next difference is that arteries, what is the origin of arteries? As we all know that arteries arise from the heart. Arteries arise from heart. This is the origin of arteries. Look here, a big artery arises from heart, that is aorta, and then bifurcates and give branches to the body. So that is artery, and arteries arise from heart, and veins arise and collected from body tissues, right? So veins arise from body tissues. Okay, the next thing, what is the insertion of arteries? Arteries insert into the body. It means, look here, this is the heart, this is heart, and here are other body parts. This is a person standing here, right? Now look carefully. Arteries arise from heart and insert to the body, in the body. I have written here that the origin of arteries is from heart. This is artery. Okay, and what is the origin of veins? Our veins arise from the body and are inserted to the heart, and are inserted in heart. So what is the origin of arteries? Body. And what is the insertion of arteries? Arteries insert in heart. Clear, friends? Okay, from here we can define our arteries also. What are arteries? Those blood vessels which arise from heart, which move away from heart, are called arteries, and those blood vessels which move towards the heart are called veins. Those blood vessels which arise from heart, let me write here, arise from heart are called arteries, and which move towards heart, are called veins. Okay, so these were some differences between arteries and veins. Thank you so much.